Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chatham House. It's my very great pleasure to welcome today the Foreign Minister of Qatar, Dr. Khalid bin Mohammed Al-Attiyah, to Chatham House. His first visit to us in this capacity, we're discussing maybe your first visit inside this building, but I can think of no better time for us to have the opportunity to discuss the future of Qatar's foreign policy. Qatar is a country that is pivotal in a pivotal region. And there's probably no more complex a time to be able to welcome you here to Chatham House. We were discussing beforehand the many issues that are likely to come up in this conversation. I do want to remind everyone here, but the Foreign Minister knows already that this meeting is on the record rather than under the Chatham House rules, so we'll be speaking in that capacity. If I could please make sure that you all have your mobile phones switched off so that we're not interrupted in this meeting today. Foreign Minister Al-Attiyah took up his position in June of this year, having served for about 2 years prior to that as Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, but he'd held several other government positions beforehand, Minister of State for International Cooperation, also working on the finance side as Vice Chairman of the Qatar Financial Central Authority in a number of positions on the financial side of Qatar as well. I noted that although having started out as a fighter pilot, he went on to study law through to your doctorate, Foreign Minister. So I think that kind of legal upbringing and that training is probably serving you in great stead at the moment with the very complex dossier that you face and the very important role that Qatar is likely to be playing in the future of the Middle East. So I want to say on behalf of Chatham House, my colleagues in the Middle East and North Africa program as well, welcome to our institute. We look forward to your remarks, and we will then have time for a good half an hour of conversation as well with our guests here today. So welcome to the Institute.
Thank you very much. My barons and lords, excellencies, dear Niblet, Dr. Niblet, member of Chatham House, distinguished guest, member of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all. It is a great pleasure for me to be here today and to address such a prominent audience. Founding on the principle of studying international problems to prevent future wars, the Royal Institute of International Affairs is widely recognized as one of the most relevant venues for discussion of current issue. Personally, I consider this to be one of our most valuable assets in a world that has become ever more complex and ever more volatile. In other words, the mission of Chatham House today remains as valid, if not more valid, in fact, than at the time of its founding, under the leadership of Lionel Cortés. Known for his love of travel and legendary ability to argue, Cortés wrote and lived in a world greatly different from ours. London in July 1920, when the British Institute of International Affairs was created, bears little resemblance to the London of today, except, of course, for the great weather. Obviously, the same holds true for the region I come from, the Arabian Gulf. The world of December 2013 is indeed a different place. And yet, our need to understand its dynamic, our need to understand its trajectory, and our need to understand one another have never been greater. It is therefore quite fitting that I be here with you today to discuss the foreign policy of an Arab peninsula known to many, but truly understood by few. A place that the urbanized, modernized, and globalized faster over the past 2 decades than arguably any other on earth, the state of Qatar. And the great Irish master, Eugene O'Neill, once said, there is no present or future, only the past, happening over and over again now. The human presence on the Qatari peninsula goes back tens of thousands of years. The written history of my country can be traced to the mention by 5th century Greek historian Herodotus. The articulation and diffusion of our past, however, has taken different, perhaps less conventional forms. In many respects, the history of Qatar embodies the experience of its people. Crossing the land, thrive loyal to their natural environment and devoted to the fundamental principle of community and constant adaptation. History in Qatar is therefore easier to witness in the living rather than the dead. In the importance of tradition, in the pivotal role of the elders, in the aspiration of the youth, and in the clarity of our vision. Similarly, an understanding of modern day Qatar will require a firm grasp of the impact on such singular civilization of the astonishing change that have taken place over the past 2 decades. This part of our history began in October 1938 with the drilling of the first oil well in the Jabal Dukhan, opening chapter that will lead this country from the frugality of the pearl diving age to the wealth and rapid development of the LNG era. This journey, dear friends, was neither linear nor easy. Understanding our foreign policy as a state requires understanding our trajectory as a people. Contrary to popular perception, Qatar was not always a land of plenty. In fact, and rarely ever was until the last few decades of the 20th century. Before that, Qatar had only enjoyed a period of social progress and economic prosperity. Following the advent of our founder, Sheikh Jassim bin Mohammed Al Thani, Sheikh Jassim achieved national unity on 18 December 1878, allowing Qatar to experience its first significant opening through trade, education, and philanthropy. Pearl diving was on the rise in Doha, soon become an important commercial hub. This flourishing era, however, came to a quick end. Some of you may not know that, but when the Second World War interrupted international trade, about 1/3 of our population actually died of hunger. The consequent disruption of food supplies extended a period of economic hardship in Qatar that had begun in the 1920s with the collapse of the pearl trade, and which deepened with the global depression in the 1930s. Such deprivation led to the massive migration of families and tripled throughout the peninsula in a context of widespread poverty, malnutrition, and diseases. When my father's generation was born, 1 in 4 women still died during childbirth. A constant from this difficult times through today, nonetheless, is the wonderful spirit and the strong character of Qatari people. A people who few words, whose actions speak on their behalf. A people whose men are known for their generosity, their courage, and their honesty. Such traits are matched only by the remarkable nature of the Qatari woman, role model, guardian of our education, and simply the foundation of our society. While limited comparative terms, oil revenue eventually put Qatar on more solid path to development with major implication for both economy and society. Our country's first school opened in 1947, and a full-scale hospital followed in 1959. This period also coincided with the development of government structure and public service. The first state budget was drawn in 1953. A year later, there were 42 Qatari government employers. This early period of change had important political, financial, and social implications. Qatar was even the stage of oil worker strikes. But don't worry, all of them are still alive yet after the strike. The country was going through its first period of rapid, largely uncorrected evolution. Yet, by the end of 1980, there was still only one significant building, the Sheraton Hotel in Doha. In less than 10 years, more than 100 skyscrapers will join it. Qatar was on the verge of the second modern evolution, this time on a totally unprecedented scale. The best way to predict your future is to create it, Abraham Lincoln said. Leadership, as many of you know, can be a lonely place. Indeed, our father Amir, His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, held firm in his long-term strategic vision for Qatar when he decided in mid of 1990 to pursue liquefied natural gas and petrochemical as the future backbone of our economy. Taken into context of severe financial difficulties with a state on the verge of bankruptcy, This Virgin Act received little support and much opposition at that time, even from close friends. I think it is fair to say that this decision is now largely vindicated. Presently, Qatar is the largest exporter of LNG in the world. It's well positioned to become a global leader in petrochemical production, and its citizens are enjoying one of the highest GDP per capita in the world. The proposition that Qatar does not have a culture of strong strategic vision simply does not stand the test of objective scrutiny. Under the leadership of our father Emir, the country also experienced an outstanding development leap. According to the World Bank, mortality in Qatar is now one of the lowest in the world. Our country enjoys high literacy, low unemployment rate, and very low level of crime. Young men and women in Qatar have full exposure to advanced learning through the establishment of top-level education culture in the city of Doha. The 2013 United Nations Human Development Report ranked Qatar at the top of the Arab world and 36th overall out of 186 countries. The human advancement, along with many other individual rights, including personal liberty, private ownership, and access to education, are secured through our country's permanent constitution, which was adopted in 2003 by public referendum. This is a story of a country pleased with natural resource, but whose wise leadership managed in a very short amount of time to deliver real social and economic improvement. It is not a perfect story and will always try to improve. But while the state of Qatar has not arrived, it has certainly made remarkable headway. Therefore, when assigning our trajectory, let us not lose sight of the complex of sequential nature of development as a process whose outcome remain overdetermined, a journey that knows many stages and contingencies, a course that can encounter setback, especially when pursued so rapidly. Over the past decade, Qatar has probably enjoyed the highest GDP and population growth, rated in the world at average of respectively 15% and 13% annually. While growing rapidly, our country also became an increasingly relevant hub. A story comes to mind that could not illustrate this point better. When I left Qatar for special training in the UK as an Air Force pilot, there was only one flight per week between our two countries. As I speak, there are now no less than 6 flights to London daily. Qatar is now a central part of our globalized world. Certainly, this audience will appreciate the wide-ranging social and economic implication of this structural demand on national capacity. But our growth story also includes significant and sometimes ignored cultural and psychological dimension. How to make sense of an interconnected, rapidly change and still unequal world is a question that I believe all countries, whether in the East or the West, struggle with today. The state of Qatar is contributing its own answer, even if incomplete, to this fundamental question. Under the guidance of the Emir, a new generation of Qatari has now taken the baton. This generation will continue to build the country in line with the founding principle of our nation anchor in Qatar National Vision 2030. This principle will also guide our engagement abroad as a constructive member of the international community, a role that Qatar takes on with both humility and confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me at this point to turn to the core tenets of our foreign policy. The state of Qatar relations with other countries are based on mutual respect and common interest. These relations are both balanced and growing. Article 7 of Qatari Constitution reads as follows. The foreign policy of state of Qatar is based on a principle of strengthening international peace and security by means of encouraging peaceful resolution of international disputes, shall support the right of people to self-determination, shall not interfere in the domestic affairs of state, and shall cooperate with peace-living nation. The document approved by strong popular consent clearly outlined the founding principle of Qatar foreign policy. Chief among them stand the preservation of international peace and security. As such, the state of Qatar will always be a peaceful and productive party to any conflict resolution effort, especially in the Middle East. Over the past decade, has Qatar has played a significant role on regional mediator stopping violence and warfare, as in case of Lebanon in 2008. This dedication to resolve conflict stemmed from the long-standing Qatar tradition of mediation. Our cultural norms also emphasize tolerance and openness, especially toward those in difficulty. In the word of our founder, Sheikh Jassim, Qatar, Ka'bat al-Madhyum. Qatar is the destination of the oppressed. Qatar will always welcome those who do not have home and empower those who no longer have a voice. Our country will continue to protect human life during conflict, even at individual level. Hence, Qatar's silent but effective work in the release of numerous hostages initiative, whose success proves our credibility among various opposition parties in the region. This important and complicated role, I believe, should neither be attacked nor taken for granted. I have stressed the importance of providing good office and reaching out, yet peace and security sometimes warrant more than mediation. This way, our country will also stand firmly and fulfill its shared responsibility toward regional peace and stability when needed, as in the current case of Syria, where our stance has always been to call for a peaceful political solution despite the systematic crime of the Assad regime. 3 years into the conflict, the country is destroyed. More than 3 million refugees, an average of 3,000 deaths per month. Thousands of innocent children killed, thousands of harmless women and girls subject to sexual abuse and violence. In the face of such atrocity, it is our conviction that Bashar al-Assad has lost any interest in political solution, holding the international community hostage to his desire to stay in power at any human cost. The state of Qatar simply cannot subscribe to this immoral waiting game. Our foreign policy in Syria remains to protect the human life in any way possible, to ensure safe corridor for humanitarian aid, to promote a political solution to end the violence, to support the coalition in their aspiration for transitional government, and to collaborate through the Friends of Syria group and other multilateral channels. This policy has been complemented by a humanitarian campaign aimed to providing food, shelter, medical care, and education to the Syrian people and to Syrian refugees in Qatar. With the winter upon us, we urge the international community to work together in assuring the passage of crucial aid inside Syria and to stabilization of humanitarian corridors. As stated in our constitution, another key principle of Qatar foreign policy is to support people's right to self-determination and collective aspiration. Such an assistance taken an even greater meaning when this aspiration are geared toward justice and freedom. In this context, the state of Qatar supported the emerging democracy in Egypt should be understood and analyzed. Indeed, Qatar and Egypt shared a long fraternal history, a history colored by the power of culture, the influence of the Arab language, and the significance of trade and industry. Supporting the Egyptian people as they liberated themselves through peaceful means from the grip of dictator rule post-25th of January 2011 was not only our political responsibility, it was our moral duty. And so Qatar did assisted the economy of Egypt, fulfilling the commitment on LNG shipment and providing much needed financial aid as the country finance neared a complete collapse. This support, ladies and gentlemen, covered the entire period from Mohammed Hussein Tantawi all the way to Adli Mansour and to Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The state of Qatar worked with government, not with political parties or fictions. Qatar policy toward Egypt remains the same and in anchored full respect of the country nation sovereignty and territorial integrity. This policy is based on the following principle: to work with the country legitimate government, not with a party or a group, to provide assistance as needed and upon request by the government, to encourage dialogue between all parties, to promote inclusion into national political framework, and to never resort to force against peaceful protesters. It is ultimately beyond question that the stability of Egypt is in the interest of everyone. I believe that a stable Arab world is a stable world, period. Preserving global peace and security, however, remains collectively a responsibility to be borne by all members of the international community. In that respect, I am proud to highlight that the State of Qatar has always been and will continue to be an engaged participant in the formal, multilateral, and regional fora. Whether it be United Nations, the Arab League, or the Gulf Cooperation Council, Qatar recognizes the need for and the value of this collaborative and rules-based institution. Our country will always aim to be a constructive party in this organization and to support the crucial initiative they promote. This is especially true in the case of the Palestinian issue, a conflict that we believe is best addressed and best decided upon in the legitimate avenue of international institution. As stated earlier, the state of Qatar considers the peace is fundamental to global stability. It also realized that several regional and international variables have to be taken into consideration when it comes to the subject of Israel and Palestine. I am deeply concerned, however, about the current state of affairs, especially the increase in illegal settlement and the number of deaths committed by the Israeli army. As a result, the peace process is weakened, and the prospect for stability only pushed further away. Qatar strongly supports the effort of the Arab Peace Initiative and the role played by our friend, the United States, to find a just solution to this conflict. We emphasize that the Palestinian cause is our cause and the first cause of the Arab people. We reject all form of Israel settlement and press the European Union firm and coherent position in this regard. It is unclear that Israel has any intention to bring this conflict to an end, despite the willingness to engage of Qatar and other peace-seeking parties. It is unclear also that Israel has shown any commitment during this negotiation, despite our deduction to pick this complex yet realistic process. Our position remains that peace cannot and will not be achieved until Israel fully withdraws from the occupied territories. Our position remains that a just solution consists in the establishment of Palestinian state based on the pre-1967 border with full sovereignty and East Jerusalem as a capital. Anything short of that will only delay peace and justice further. Having highlighted Qatar's dedication to the multilateral process and international collaboration, allow me to make a broader point about the concept of inclusion as a key component of our foreign policy strategy and philosophy. Our country considers that political solutions require the representation and participation of all parties to the conflict, no matter how difficult and controversial at the time. It is our belief that only such precondition can allow for viable, legitimate, and ultimately long-term resolution to conflict. The necessity of inclusion is the reason why our country offered to host reconciliation discussion between leadership of Fatah and Hamas in February 2012. The necessity of inclusion is the reason why the state of Qatar worked tirelessly to bring together under one umbrella the various opposition groups of Syria later that year. The necessity of inclusion is the reason why Qatar offered to facilitate the establishment of political office of the Taliban to resume contact with all parties. Consistent with this view, we welcome the recently announced Geneva Interim Agreement on the Iranian nuclear program. Our recommendation would be to hold this consultation not as a 5+1, but actually as a 5+2 with the inclusion of the GCC, an essential party to the stability of the region. Qatar also took this opportunity to restate its position that the Middle East should be a fully nuclear-free zone. While Qatar and Iran clearly disagree over Syrian conflict, it is important to remember that our two countries also share much in common, starting with a long-standing history of trade and cultural exchange across the Gulf. I am therefore surprised and a bit saddened by the current tendency going around to create a virtual enemy. I am afraid, though, that this unfortunate tactics will simply go to waste. We do indeed strongly differ with our Iranian neighbor over the issue of Syria. But the state of Qatar does not consider Iran it's an enemy. I now turn to the issue of the foreign aid as a central component of Qatar foreign policy strategy. The state of Qatar believes that economic development and social inclusion are the safest, most reliable path to peace and stability. This is why our foreign aid contribution is now nearing the $1 billion mark annually, spread across 100+ countries. On relative basis, it is worth mentioning that Qatar actually spent more on international assistance than the United States or even Germany. The state of Qatar is a generous development partner, but it has also provided to be a dependable ally to developed nations in time of crisis. The case of Japan, a country whose trust and friendship we really value, comes to mind post-tsunami. Year in, year out, Qatar provides critical support to development and post-conflict countries, helping them build the institution most needed for peaceful and prosperous future. Doing so falls both under the strategic interest and our moral obligation to build better, safer world for all our children. Finally, Qatar foreign policy distinguished itself throughout an ongoing effort to support the rise of women in the diplomatic corps. We believe and are committed to the effective contribution of all members of Qatar society to government, irrespective of age and indeed of gender. Truly, I could not be prouder of the many bright young Qatari women who plays an essential role in our country diplomat efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, having set out the key principle and stated objective of Qatar foreign policy, allow me to make one quick final point about its effectiveness. Indeed, it has been argued at a time that Qatar action tended only to reap short-term results and that its strategy remained largely opportunistic. It has been suggested also that our foreign policy was more concerned with public diplomacy than strategic achievement. Obviously, I could not disagree more. On a number of critical issue, the state of Qatar has made significant and at times decisive contribution to the international peace and security. Through its good office, Qatar has avoided the extension of several conflicts and has brought to the negotiation table many parties that otherwise would not have come. In the mediation capacity, our country has saved the lives of numerous hostages and humanitarian workers, and it continues to do so. Perhaps Qatar is subject of so much skepticism because it is fully and eagerly embracing its international responsibility. In fact, criticism is often the price to pay for standing up and follow one's beliefs. In the world of the Emir, His Highness Sheikh Tamim, we do not live on the sideline of life, and we do not adrift without a destination. We are people with a vision. The state of Qatar has always lived up to its role and a productive participation in the international community, sparing no effort to engage and honor its commitment. With COP19 having closed just a few weeks ago in Warsaw, we are reminded of the important and concrete achievements secured at COP18 in Doha, the 2012 United Nations Conference of Climate Change. As a strong advocate of GCC integration, Qatar is often leading the way on issues such as food security and sustainable development policy. Through its promotion of education worldwide, our country has opened the doors of classrooms to hundreds of thousands of children, especially in war-torn countries. And as all of you know, Qatar will be hosts of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, a true catalyst for our continuous development and a wonderful opportunity to welcome the world to Doha. I have tickets, by the way, if you need. These are achievements that any country should be proud of, especially on that let's experience so many transformations over the past 2 decades. I am here today to assure you Qatar's determination to pursue its constructive and inclusive role in international affairs. Under the wise leadership of His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the state of Qatar will remain an engaged and contributive actor in our common enterprise for a peaceful and prosperous world. Ladies and gentlemen, surely our world today has become so polarized and at a time so violent because we know not the right word to discuss our difference. Our failure as a global polity is an increasingly narrow space we receive for informed conversation. What we need today is another generation of Lionel Kurtz. What we need today is more institutions like Chatham House that bring us close together. What we need today is the will to celebrate knowledge, the strength to consider its wisdom, and the courage to act with honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Foreign Minister, for those thoughtful remarks. And thank you in particular for raising as well the name of Lionel Curtis, which I particularly appreciate. I was reading about him earlier on today for various reasons to do with Chatham House, but he was somebody actually with the vision that you just described. And I thank you for recognizing his name here. You've covered a lot of topics, and I already have hands going up throughout the room, so I'm going to do my very best to take as many of them as I possibly can, and we'll start maybe one by one and then group as we go on.
I meant to make it long to skip the questions.
You know, despite that, you've left yourself a good 25 minutes, I'm sorry, and our members are going to be quite insistent,
Can I go
I'm sure. You know, for the postscript, exactly. We'll give you a chance at the end at 2 o'clock, if you wish. But you talked about the principles, which I think was an important way to come into the specifics, the issues of self-determination, thinking about mediation, development, inclusion, but then you played them specifically right from the Taliban issue to Egypt, to Syria, to the role of the GCC, to your relationship with Saudi Arabia. So you really, I think, covered these issues, and you tackled the issue of effectiveness right at the end. And these will all be topics I think we'll come up to. Can I just take the power of the chair to throw in just a first question at the beginning in a general sense, and I won't impinge hopefully too much on other people's questions, but I just want to ask, as a country that set out a very clear economic strategy at the beginning, you described it in the first part of your remarks, do you fear that a large part of the Arab world is trying to undertake reform through political process before perhaps the economies are in a position to be able to sustain that political change? When the Arab uprisings took place, many people welcomed them in the West as perhaps opening up an opportunity to break into a new era of economic opportunity and individual opportunity. But as we look across the record from Tunisia, even in its difficult situation, to Libya, to Syria, to Egypt, many people are saying maybe we should be doing the economics first and let the politics follow second. And even countries in the Gulf might point to that being the route as well. So how do you see the connection between economic development and political development in the Gulf? I mean, across the region.
Across the region, you mean? Let me start saying this, that our region are a highly potential region.
Highly?
Potential. There is so
high
many
potential.
in every manner, you name it, you know, minerals, first comes people and so on. I think both should go together. We should not ignore the economic development and just concentrate on the political issue and forget that the plane is going nose down. So you have to pick up the stall first. And this will help in the improvement of the political process. So I believe both goes hand on hand. You cannot separate one from another. And you need a wise leadership to do both at the same time. We went through this in Qatar in the previous days, and we know what it means to be under pressure from the outside world, and at the same time you are at the edge of a bankruptcy, and you just recover from that. And we went through this experience.
Well, look, thank you very much for that opening comment. Let me take some questions. First, in that row just there with the hand up. Yeah, coming through to you. Yes, please hold on. Microphone, and then I've got several hands here. Yeah, and then come. Yeah. If you introduce yourselves, everyone, please. Yeah.
A member of Chatham House. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the clear talk about Qatar's dynamic foreign policy. My question is, there has been a change in the leadership, political leadership in Qatar. How did that impact the any changes in the Qatar's foreign policy, and especially towards Iran? Can you tell us more, especially Iran after the agreement, if there has been changes in foreign policy? And the question about your foreign policy towards Iraq. Qatar has no embassy in Iraq, and Iraq, after all, is a Gulf power. So what are the concerns here? Thank you.
So leadership change, and is that influencing your policy towards Iran? And then this very specific question on Iraq. Maybe you'd like to take those.
Yeah, thank you,
Minister.
Madam. No, actually, I set our principle in my speech earlier. We have, from the founder to the Emir, President Emir, we have a set of principles which we go by. Maybe the approach has changed, but we stick to our policy. There is no change in our policy. And it has been always a 360 degrees relation with everyone. We keep the relation because it is the easiest and the solid way to solve any issue with your brotherly country or friends around you. So our policy is the same. Maybe the approach changes and maybe faces, but we have the same principle.
And on Iraq?
Iraq, we have a relation with Iraq. Iraq is a member of the Arab League, and maybe for a technical reason, we don't have the embassy yet, but we have no issue with Iraq at all. Iraq is a member, we are a member in the Arab League, and the relation is going on normally.
Let me keep bringing some questions in. I think we're going to come back to Iran. I suspect that won't be your last answer on Iran. Please, gentlemen here. Yes, microphone's there. Yeah, I'll repeat the question in a minute. That microphone isn't working, but keep asking the question. I'll repeat it quickly. Syria and Egypt, yeah?
Syria and Egypt. The question I want to ask you is this. You said in your speech that you work with governments and not parties. Why is it then you do not work with Syrian government, which I believe that 60% plus of the Syrians do support their president? Is it because, one, he's a Shia or Alevi? Other countries are not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Very closer on Syria.
No, fine. No, actually, Syria situation is different. If you know, it's not because Alawis or Shia. The best friend of Bashar al-Assad was us. We had a very good relation with Bashar al-Assad. And when the conflict started in the beginning, we went to Bashar maybe 4 times at all levels you imagine in Qatar, all levels. And we start to speak to him. We try to encourage him to start reform. In fact, I'll go more. We asked him to go and pay condonation to the first incident in Dar'a. And we said that this is your chance. Go pay the condonation and put this man who is behind this to trial. He refused. When Bashar al-Assad decided to kill his people, then we stand by the people. This is our principle. This is Syria.
And question to the next door, next to him there, please. Ian, I think it was you. Yes, microphone coming to you.
Thank you.
If you could please introduce yourselves always, please, so we know who the people asking the questions. Yeah.
Ian Black from The Guardian. Can I ask a follow-up question on Syria, then one other distinct question? I wonder on Syria if you could tell us a little bit about your expectations for the Geneva Peace Conference, which of course has been scheduled now for January, and obviously Qatar has played a very important role in supporting the opposition to President Assad, as you just mentioned. It would be interesting to hear a little bit about what you're doing at the moment. And an unrelated question, if I may, very briefly, is about the World Cup, which you mentioned. I think everybody's very keen on the offer of the tickets. But may I ask, please, what steps you're taking in Qatar to address the labour and living conditions of migrant workers in the face of repeated documented allegations about the living and working conditions of the migrant labourers. That's, of course, Amnesty International, the International Trade Union Confederation, the ILO, and others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So maybe starting on the Geneva and Syria, what do you expect to get out of Geneva too?
Yes, we've always been welcoming a political solution to the Syrian issue. What we looking to see the outcome of Geneva 2 is actually the implementation of Geneva 1. The outcome of Geneva 1 is clear for all the friends of Syria, and what we need to see in Geneva 2 is the implementation of that outcome. An implementation which you will see a transitional government with full authority, defense, military, security, And this is what the end game should be from Geneva 2. If this addresses your question. Back to...
Could I just follow up just quickly on that point? You talked about the importance of inclusion. How would you define, within the context of a Geneva 2 that implements Geneva 1, the issue of inclusion? Where would you draw the lines within, let's say, the existing regime, the existing government? How can that have an inclusive outcome that is credible for a transitional government? How would you draw
I
those
believe
lines?
after all this massacre in Syria, it's clear that the regime should go to Lahai and other people should go to Geneva to discuss the transition. This is what should happen. We don't have a gray, it's not a gray, it's black and white.
Okay.
Whoever have blooded his hand against the Syrian people should go to Lahai.
Okay. So on the
Was it?
second question, people can come back. Yep. On the second question, just about the...
Yeah, the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Is the DLA Piper here? Someone of them here? Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know why everybody is concerned of, which is good, which we don't oppose. But is the human right issue only because of the World Cup 2022? The human right issue has been taken care of in Qatar a long time back. But for this matter as well, when the media started to raise this issue seriously, we have identified and appointed an international firm, like the gentleman sitting here, DLA Piper, to look into this matter and give us a report. We are working. Nobody is perfect. We want them to, and the mandate, by the way, the mandate we are giving DLA Piper is not to give a good picture about Qatar. No, this is not their mandate. The mandate is to go and look through our legislation concerning labors to see if there is any wrongdoing in the labor cases, and to give us a guideline if we need to change any of the laws or the implementation to keep a safe labor environment in Qatar. If this answers your question.
So I've got a lot of hands going up, but I am moving my way through, hopefully getting to everyone. First question here.
Thank you. Alistair Burt.
Is my microphone coming? Yes.
Alistair Burt, former Minister for the Middle East. Two things, Your Excellency, if I may. Firstly, on the football side, if there's one thing that we're good at in the United Kingdom, it's health and safety. And we might be able to provide some serious assistance there, and it'll be very important. I wanted to take you back, if I may, to Iran and this business of inclusion in Geneva. If Geneva 2 is to be about the implementation of Geneva 1, does Iran have a part in it? Iran's made it very clear that they don't accept Geneva 1. Clearly, if you're talking about blood on the hands of anyone, the Iranian support for the regime puts them in that category. But because of their engagement in Syria, are they a necessary part of the answer? If so, how do friends of Syria committed to Geneva 1 get over the problem of Iran not being committed to that, if they're to be any part of it? Or is simply the answer that until they can accept Geneva 1, they can't be part of Geneva 2?
Thank you. First of all, I'll speak about UK. Our relation with UK is deeply rooted. What we are trying to do in Qatar now is not only enhancing this route, it's already there. We are trying to widen the cooperation with UK. And this is, we don't have to address it. And, we use a lot of assistance of our, friends in UK. Something we always forget when we talk about the Syrian case here, that we forget the people of Syria. The people of Syria, they are the people who have the right to decide. Yes, there is a friend of Syria. Yes, we are there to help them, to facilitate, to try to give them advice, to try to protect them as much as we can from the brutality of the regime. But in the end of the day, it's the say of the people. We cannot impose on them what we think it's right or it's wrong. Otherwise, why did they make the revolution? They were so courageous to go against such a regime because they felt that they wanted their freedom. So why we keep imposing on these people what to do? They will have to say, we will have to respect what they say and try to facilitate and support them to do so.
Thank you. First question, yes, at the back, please. Put your hand. Yeah. Yes, I got you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Steve Crawshaw from Amnesty International. Following up slightly on the Guardian's question, if I may, you've talked yourself, the national strategy talks of the importance of improving labour rights for enhancing the image of Qatar, and you addressed that obliquely. Can I pin you down a little bit, at least from your personal perspective, of things that you would like to do? We welcome the fact that you've been open to Amnesty International and others in terms of our recent report. But, for example, the exit permit rules which are there, at the very least, do you see those as something that can be removed and which are the source of enormous problems at the moment, or any other things that you would like to see concretely changed? The list is pretty long, but interesting to hear what you would like to see changed. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for the report you've done. It was a helpful report, which we included it to the firm which we have to appoint to look into it seriously and give us advice on it. Exit permit and the kafala, so-called in the region, it's an legal tools, and it's for the whole region. You know, we are in the GCC cooperation, a closed border, open, sort of open border together, and this is not only an issue that Qatar has to care about, but we have done so many things, so many laws and mechanisms and procedures to protect the laborers when they want to change job or they want to exit Qatar. So this is a fact, this is happening, and it is in Qatar. But again, everything is possible. We will have only to wait for the outcome of the report, and we will assure you that we are serious on fixing, and going forwards in our prosperity in Qatar.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to group a couple of questions together. I've got a lot of hands. I'm warning, I won't get to everyone. I've seen everyone. I'm trying to get the questions as quick as I can. You're giving very direct answers, which is helpful and quick, so thank you. But I'm the lady there and the gentleman here. But lady there first, and we'll take two together. Yep. Introduce
Your
yourself,
Excellency,
please.
it's Sarah Al-Mahri from the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what sort of measures are being taken by Qatar to achieve a common ground with other GCC states on regional issues for them to achieve a more consistent foreign policy.
Great. So thank you. Question on GCC cooperation. And gentleman here. No, not you, sir. Sorry, the person next to you. Yeah. Thank you.
Bassam Tabliye, Principal Solicitor of Cham Solicitors. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Qatari, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and UK for their support in relation to Syria and their political attitude. In fact, I would like to bring the attention of the attendees here about what the seas in Syria, how people in Ghouta and Maddamia, they eat cats, animals, dogs, and lions. Just to bring it to your attention, he put seas, he wants to kill the people in order not to say the freedom or request the freedom. This is what is going on. 1,200 people killed, just die from starving. In the Al Jazeera report, every week six children die every week just from starving. Okay. What I would like just to ask Your Excellency about we can see that there is a backfall in humanitarian support in relation to this one, to Syria. Why you cannot, or the international or the countries, a strong country cannot remove or release these seas on those areas? Thank you very much.
So, a question, whichever order you want to take it on, but GCC cooperation, the role that Qatar sees it being able to play going forward, and then this very specific question on the appalling humanitarian situation in Syria and how you could do something about that, what you can do about it.
For my colleague Sarah, I would like to answer her that GCC is in our DNA. So there is nothing Qatar can do to close up the GCC relation. We are one, and I cannot say more on that. We have no issue, so we can close the gap between us and GCC country. So I don't have anything else to add on this. And the beauty of the GCC is that our destiny is one. Nobody can dispute our destiny. The only thing is that, and this is the beauty about GCC, that we are still sovereign countries, and it's good to have differences in different issues outside the GCC. if this addresses your question. For our colleague, sorry.
Yes, sir, buddy, go ahead. Sorry.
For our colleague from Syria, yes, we are doing our best. There is a presidential statement from the Security Council. We are working together now with the Security Council to try to get a resolution with our Arab colleagues in New York to make this presidential a resolution under the Security Council. If it's happened, then at least we can have something to enforce a humanitarian corridor in Syria to reach the people.
Right, I'm going to take 3 questions quickly now. We'll see how we're doing on time. First, Your Highness Princess Basma, there. And if you could bring the microphone to this person here, please, first. This one here. Sorry, I've got to go in the order in which I saw this person. There, yeah. Please.
Hello, Dr. Khalid. How are you?
Hi. Sorry.
Basma Al-Saud, Chatham House member and the head of the Lanterns Humanitarian Group. Now, I've heard a lot about the policies. You've run over all the policies that could actually be mentioned. My concern right now, since everybody is talking about politics, my concern is, like my colleague here, is the humanitarian aspect of the genocides in Syria, in Egypt, and the humanitarian aspect of how you left the humanitarian aspect on the side and addressed the issue of politics first. I've asked this question when I was in Qatar to the previous foreign minister, and his answer was actually, our duty right now is to overthrow the regime, and then we would look at the humanitarian aspect. And I think that is a very wrong statement. I went down to the borders and the refugees camps in Syria, and the Jordanese and the Syrian and the Lebanese borders. And I've asked them about the Qatari help, which have been announced previously. And you have announced that your grants to problems in the world overcomes America and Germany on its own. Where is the help, the humanitarian help that you promised to the refugees of Syria on the borders?
Thank you very much. If you just hold that question, please, sir, and gentlemen here.
Chris Doyle, the Director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding. Thank you very much for the talk. I was just wanting to ask you, we heard some very strong comments from the British Prime Minister yesterday about extremist groups and ideologies and so forth. But from the Qatari perspective, how should we be addressing, and what advice would you give in terms of addressing, obviously, the extremist groups we now see in Syria, but also in Mali and other countries, and of course the events in Kenya? How are we going to be able to tackle what is clearly a real problem for the world right now?
Can I just, because I know we're going to run up close to time, we've had a number of questions come in through from members over the internet. And a question which you've not been able to address yet, if I could throw this on at the end, which is the role of the United States. Qatar has had a good relationship with the United States at certain levels. Perhaps support of Hamas and so on are areas where there's disagreement. If you could take some sort of, tell us something about your perspective of how you see the US role in the region and how you see it evolving, the concerns over energy self-sufficiency, etc. So if you could take those 3 questions, extremist groups, the humanitarian aspect, and Egypt came in there. We haven't really talked much about Egypt, and I think you did reference that earlier on, but Egypt came in as well.
Did I hear any Egypt?
I heard she said there was a mention of the word Egypt. No, but that was on a different context.
Yeah, I'll speak about the humanitarian issue that Prince Basma has mentioned. Usually, our nature, I'm sure you are from the region. We never talk about what we do in a humanitarian aspect. But if it makes you comfortable, until as we speak today, Qatar almost has raised and delivered $1.2 billion only for the humanitarian aid. And this is if in the humanitarian. Okay. Please, yeah. Well, this is what we delivered under my supervision. Back to the question of extremists. I cannot explain it in this short time. I know that we are limited in time, but we have to ask ourselves a question: who made this extremist? We started with no extremists at all. We started with people calling for freedom and saying, "Manna ghayrak ya Allah" in Arabic, we have no one but you, God. Nobody stood behind them. Second thing, maybe I can do it quick. If you are a Jew or a Muslim or a Christian, when you have a crisis, first thing you do, you go close to your God. So it cannot be that because they are close to God under an attack of barrels and chemical weapon, and they are seeing their children dying every day, their women, the picture, the gentleman who has just showed us, and then we classify them as terrorists. But we have to search who is the terrorist group now and how did they came later to Syria, and which route they took and how they came. I think it's need a stand-alone session to explain this. This is a very sensitive, which need a thorough discussion. I'm sorry, Chris, I cannot, answer it in this short time.
Just on the United States, your sense of their role in the relationship. You didn't mention them at all in your speech. That's why I was just wondering, such an important alliance that you have.
The United States is they have a very crucial role in the region. They are like Britain. They are an ally to Qatar. We have a strategic relationship as we do with UK, with the American. At the end of the day, we are a sovereign country. We can have differences in everywhere. This is what I have touched before. It does not mean that if we can speak to a party but at one stage, you might fight a group and then come and ask Qatar to come and mediate. And it's happened. We have examples. For us, if we go back to Hamas, it's again the process which we fear. The process which Hamas has, it's not the end game. It's not who comes and lead. It's if you tamper with the process, if you have a democratic process, you have to protect. And this is maybe people, they don't understand us when we argue. We would like the process to be protected.
Foreign Minister, thank you very much for those thoughts. We've gone over time. I've got at least 5 to 6 questions I did not get to. I apologize to those people who I caught, but I'm afraid I was not able to include, but we've already gone a bit over time. You have another meeting coming up. I said at the beginning that you trained as a lawyer, and you are clearly facing a whole bunch of cross currents in the region. We wish you every success, along with other leaders in the region, in being able to address them. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to come and join us today, and the Ambassador as well for helping us arrange, Ambassador Mansouri, for helping us arrange this meeting. Thank you very much for coming, for asking very good questions as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.